it's Jennifer and welcome back to my Flagstaff home. I am here today to talk to you about some different ways to preserve cherry tomatoes. One of my favorite things about growing a garden is that I can preserve the flavors of summer to have at times of year when tomatoes or when produce tends to not really taste like much of anything. And so especially where I live in the summer, when I live in Flagstaff, which is a mountain town in northern Arizona where we have 100 inches of snow on average every year. Yes, there is a part of Arizona that has snow. And we have such nice summers that most people, probably well over half the people in Flagstaff, maybe more like 3/4, don't have air conditioning in their homes because it doesn't get that hot. Although this summer it did. We had a hot summer. So it was the first house that we've lived in Flagstaff where we have air conditioning, and I was very happy about that. So, but all of that to say that typically our growing season is so short that we don't really get to taste the harvest until the very end of the summer because it just doesn't get warm enough to grow things really quickly. And so anyway, what I love is being able to take what I do grow at the end of the summer and start preserving it in different ways. Now, my garden this year in a lot of ways was a big flop, but what was not a flop were my tomatoes. I grew 11 tomato plants. They all went crazy. 3 of the 11 were cherry tomato. Well, no. Okay. So 2 of them were cherry tomatoes and one of them was like this little currant tomato, little tiny, like currant berry kind of things, really packed a punch in flavor. And then the rest of them were regular sized tomatoes. But boy, oh boy, did those cherry tomato and currant tomato plants dump a harvest. I mean, I'm still getting, we're in October now, and I am still getting tons and tons of cherry tomatoes. So I thought I would show you all the different ways that I am preserving them so that when we're in the middle of winter and buying a tomato at the grocery store means that you're going to end up with a tomato that tastes like nothing, I am going to be able to enjoy these things that I have preserved. So let me go ahead and show you. So this is the oven roasted then freezing way of storing cherry tomatoes. And so you just take your cherry tomatoes, you can see I have a couple different kinds here, rinse them off, put them on a cookie sheet. I didn't have very many this time around. I'm doing them in batches as I have them ready. And I didn't put any oil or salt or anything on them. I put them in a toaster oven and put them in for, this was probably close to 2 hours, not quite 2 hours, because they were starting to get brown and you want the skins to be kind of shriveled. And that is all I did. And then now I'm letting them cool and I will put them in some kind of freezer safe container. I can put them in a mason jar or a plastic freezer safe container once they're cooled, and then just freeze them, and then when I want to use them to put in a sauce or whatever, I can take them out. So super easy way to preserve. This method involves roasting the cherry tomatoes and then storing them in olive oil and some spices. I'll tell you about that in a second. So what you do is you roast them on a little bit higher temperature, just put them on a cookie sheet, drizzle with a little bit of olive oil. Then they go into a 400-degree oven for about 10 minutes. About that, what you're gonna want is for the tomatoes to actually burst open a little bit. And so the skins might just shrivel back. You don't necessarily want them exploding in the oven, but you'll notice that the skins will split. And so it's usually only about maybe 8 or 10 minutes. Just check your oven temperature may be different. And so you just want the skins to kind of split open. Then you let them cool, put them in a jar. You can see that I'm slowly adding to this and I have different kinds of tomatoes in here. and put them in a jar with some slices of garlic, and also I've got some rosemary in here as well. Then you cover with olive oil until they're completely covered. So let me lift this up here so you can see that there are no tomatoes sticking through the surface of the oil. You don't want any showing through the surface because anything that's above the surface of the oil will mold. If it does happen to mold, it's no big deal. You can just scoop it off and throw that part out. But you want to try to get them covered, and then you can even push them down in there and kind of smash them. Then this is one that's already been finished and in the refrigerator, and some varieties of olive oil will solidify when you put them in the refrigerator, and some will not. It really just depends on the kind that you have. No one kind is better than another. So anyway, I put these in here. You can see that there's some different kinds of tomatoes in here. There's a little bit of garlic. There's some rosemary that's in there. And then you're going to want to leave them in the fridge for a few months before you use them, because what you really want is for the flavors of the garlic and whatever herbs you're using, you want that to infuse into the oils and the tomatoes. You'll also want the flavor of the tomatoes to kind of infuse into the oil itself, and then that way you can scoop out some to put in a sauce, or you can even scoop some of it out and spread it onto some toasted crusty bread, and it just makes really yummy flavors. And another thing you can do is make sun-dried, or they're really oven-dried, cherry tomatoes that you keep in the freezer. This is just a little bag of them that I have in my freezer. And what you do is you take these, slice them in half, kind of take your finger and flick out some of the juice that's inside. So it doesn't matter if you've got some seeds in there, and it's even okay if you have a little bit of juice, but the more juice you leave in there, the longer you're going to have to keep this in the oven. So you put it in the oven at 200 degrees, and it should take about 2 hours. I, however, had left a lot of the juice in them, and these ended up, my last batch anyway, ended up being more like 4 hours that I had to leave them in the oven. So like I said, flick some of that out, and then you get these leathery, they're not going to be crispy dried, they're going to be kind of leathery, they'll be bendable, and then you just put them in a Ziploc bag and stick them in your freezer, and they're ready to go whenever you need a sun-dried tomato. Finally, quite possibly the easiest way of preserving your cherry tomatoes is to simply freeze them. So you want to rinse them off first and dry them, and stick them in a Ziploc freezer bag and just stick them straight into the freezer. That is all you do. Then when you're going to use it, when you use this, when you thaw it out, you're not going to want to use it like fresh in a salad. It's because the texture is going to turn kind of mushy. So really this is ideal for sauces. But anyway, what you do is you run these under cool water to thaw them, and what happens is that the skins just fall off of them. And so all you have to do is just kind of squeeze on it, and the inside of the cherry tomato just pops right out. You can stick it into a saute pan, warm it up, put in your spices, whatever you want to do, and you've got yourself a nice fresh sauce. There you go. I mean, I'm so excited about all these different ways to preserve the tomatoes, to just think about making a sauce in the winter, and just taking some stuff out of my freezer and whipping up a sauce, or taking a crusty piece of bread and dipping into those tomatoes that are preserved in olive oil and herbs, and just kind of smearing some of that onto a nice crusty piece of bread. I think about making homemade pizza and getting out those sun-dried, oven-dried tomatoes from my freezer and putting them on there, so I have a really strong taste of tomatoes on my homemade pizza. Yeah, I'm really super excited about this. Hopefully you guys got some good ideas for how you can preserve your harvest. Maybe when you're watching this video,
you still have time to use some of those methods, or maybe you can store them away for next year and hang on to those delicious flavors of summer. Thanks so much for tuning in to My Flagstaff Home, and I hope I will see you again. So if you're not a current subscriber, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and YouTube will let you know when I upload new videos, which is an awful lot, and I'd love to have you come along with me. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.